Hi, and welcome to our case study entitled Columbia River Salmon, Adaptive Management When Protected Species Clash by Ryan Whiteside, Keith Cahill, Michael Winch, Daniel Draper, and Joshua Sullivan. Introduction to the case study. We selected our topic based on the High Country News article for Sea Lions, A Feast of Salmon on the Columbia, which investigates the conflict between the endangered salmon and steelhead of the Columbia River and lethal killing of California sea lions, which are also protected under the Marine Mammal Protection Act. The confusing and difficult question to be answered is, what happens when a federally protected marine mammal clashes with an endangered fish? Major topics explored in this case study include protected marine mammal predation consuming endangered at-risk fisheries, Columbia River that geographically divides the states of Washington and Oregon, many factors associated with declining fisheries in the Columbia River watershed, the overall timeline of management actions on Columbia River. Part 1, the Human Environmental Assessment, looks at the Columbia watershed that has been greatly impacted since first settlers arrived. Salmon and steelhead have declined by 90% from a high of 16 million to less than 1.5 million. And of these 1.5 million, 75% are hatchery raised. 37 genetically distinct salmon runs have been forever lost. California sea lion predation dwarfed by dams is the major cause of the declines, which has an estimated impact of 70 to 95% on the salmon. Sea lion killing is one of the targets for conservation, as the sea lions consume up to 13,000 salmon. Drivers of conflict include scientific controversy, biased decisions, litigation, millions of dollars spent, cultural significance to Native American tribes. Examples of scientific controversy are using dam spillage to help salmon migration, and the back and forth litigation between NOAA's proposed actions and the needs of Indian tribes. Part 1, continued. Ecological processes involved include anadromous fish that migrate through the Columbia watershed, the food webs and trophic relationships between them, and the tertiary primary consuming predators, including humans. The Columbia watershed is huge, contains 200 dams within the United States. 19 of these are hydroelectric dams, and the watershed is roughly the size of France. Dams have increased returning salmon migration from 2 to 3 weeks to several months, which has a highly negative effect on their survival rate, as many fish are unable to survive such a long journey through harsh treatment of passing through the dams. Dam removal was first proposed in 1994. Since 2007, 3 have been removed, and many of these dams don't even contain fish ladders, such as in Idaho Power Company's Hell's Canyon. Part 2, the decision-making process. Major decision makers include, as mentioned, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and the Washington and Oregon Departments of Fish and Wildlife, and the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission, which is the primary voice of the Indian tribes. Regulations that guide decision making include the Columbia River Compact. It's an agreement between Oregon and Washington for concurrent jurisdiction of the Columbia River fisheries. The Marine Mammal Protection Act, this is what protects the sea lions. The Endangered Species Act, as we all know, the salmon and steelhead are threatened, and then here the Endangered Salmon and Fisheries Predation Prevention Act, Continuing, euthanizing decisions, the burden of proof lies on the states of Washington and Oregon to identify the animals to euthanize. Non-lethal deterrents are used, and the seals are branded for identification. After tracking the animal, a letter must be submitted to the National Marine Fisheries Service to request lethal removal. You can see what that letter must contain here. What makes this a wicked decision-making process is both species are protected, both the sea lions and the salmon. There's a huge amount of decision makers, stakeholders, and organizations involved in this. The situation is caused by the man-made Bonneville dams, as well as many other dams, and the situation is also compounded by overfishing and declining salmon numbers. Part 3, public communication and participation process. The outline of the goals of the public participation. All four of these first ones here include public participation. So the initial request from states requesting authorization to kill individual sea lions, Pinniped Fishery Interaction Task Force, 2008 Draft and Final Environmental Assessment, 2011 Supplemental Information Report, and finally the Endangered Salmon and Fisheries Predation and Prevention Act, which eliminated local participation. Decision making and stakeholder communication roles. National Marine Fisheries Service, Oregon and Washington Departments of Fish and Wildlife, NGOs opposed to the lethal taking of the California sea lion, such as the Sea Lion Defense Brigade, Sea Shepherd Conservation Society, and the Humane Society. You can see in these pictures here. Groups that support the lethal taking of California sea lions include the Coastal Conservation Association, local support and commercial fishery groups, and the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission. So all this public incorporates into the decision-making process, and a 2008 draft and final environmental assessment was prepared, and this included 3,500 general comments. Part 4, proposed management alternatives. One was pinniped excluders, and then 2, pinniped removal, relocation. So removal was the lethal taking of the pinnipeds, and then the other was the relocation of them. The lethal removal of all California sea lions within several miles of the Bonneville Dam, a bit more drastic than just trapping them or relocating them. And then also we have the non-lethal deterrence in active hazing, which uses firecrackers, rubber bullets, acoustic devices, and boats to deter the pinnipeds. And then, of course, no action or doing nothing. Continuing, during 2015, pinnipeds harvested approximately 7,300 salmon immediately downstream from the Bonneville Dam. Each salmon harvested by recreational anglers in the streams and rivers of the Pacific Northwest has an estimated economic impact of over $1,100. Assuming that just 25% of the 2015 pinniped mortality would have been recreationally harvested by anglers, those 1,825 salmon would have had an estimated economic impact of $2.15 million. If recreationally harvest was closer to 50% of pinniped mortality, the economic impact of these 3,650 salmon would reach the value of nearly $4.3 million. The Part 5, the decision, deliberation, implementation, and evaluation. So a 2008 final environmental assessment was reached with the goal of reducing the impact on at-risk salmon and steelhead by California sea lions in the area downstream of the Bonneville Dam on the Columbia River of Oregon and Washington. Alternative 3 was preferred because it will increase the survival of threatened and endangered Columbia River adult salmonoids without negatively affecting the health of the United States population of California sea lions. Biological opinions reached were in 2008, the Federal Columbia River Power System, 2009 Adaptive Management Implementation Plan, 2014 Final Supplemental FCRPS BIOP. NOAA Fisheries conclusion that the RPA, as implemented and expected to be implemented through 2018, will avoid jeopardizing 13 listed salmon species. In conclusion, the ESA spurred the creation of the environmental assessments and biological opinions plus supplementals from the National Marine Fisheries Service and the NOAA Fisheries for the FCRPS. Their results have the ability to benefit the Columbia River salmon populations, and the monitoring results show greater benefits than projected in 2008. Thank you for listening.